Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about doing a trigger job on a 1911. Now I know what you're thinking. Holy crap, trigger job 1911. But see, the trigger, the sheer awesomeness of the 1911 trigger is what makes that platform so popular 100+ years after its design. Okay? You would be hard pressed to find, in my opinion, a better, crisper, lighter trigger than on a 1911 in any other market, any other gun platform. Okay, Glock doesn't even compare. The Smith & Wesson M&P, although you can get a really nice trigger out of them, not even close. Okay, the crisp single action trigger on a 1911 is the best trigger ever designed, and you can make it better. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to go over some basics with hammer and sear engagement and everything else. Up here, this is another one of my bad drawings. It's a very simplified drawing. I don't want to get any stupid messages saying how I didn't draw in the disconnect. Alright, seriously, piss up a rope. I know I didn't draw it in there. It's not important for this discussion. So save your nerd rage, stupid messages on YouTube for somebody else. Take it out on some Call of Duty kid. Anyway, the basics of the way the sear interacts with the hammer on a 1911, it's real simple. Okay, you have a trigger here, trigger bar, sear, and somewhere in there is going to be a disconnector, but it's not germane to this discussion. Okay, and then here's the hammer. Long story short, when you depress the trigger, it pushes back this way, which pushes the base of the sear, takes it out of its groove, lets the hammer fall because it's under spring tension, lets the hammer fall, okay, which detonates the round, which throws the slide back, which recocks the hammer and locks it back in. And every single time you pull the trigger, bang, 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 it goes through that motion, okay? The important thing here, one of the important things here is the hammer and sear engagement, okay, which happens right here. Down here, loosen it up, dude. Down here, we have, from left to right, we have the 4 different hammer sear engagements, okay? Starting on the left, we have what's called a positive engagement, which is where the very front of the sear kind of bites into this corner on the hammer, okay? It's a very hard trigger pull if you leave it like that. It's a very, very hard trigger pull, okay? It's also very safe, and there's not going to be much creep, but it's a very hard, rough trigger pull. Then we have neutral, which is going to be a moderate pull. It's going to be safe, and there's not going to be any trigger creep, and everything is flush, okay? Everything is just totally flush. Sear, hammer, right there. There's no angles, okay? Everything is 90 degrees and good to go. And then we have a negative, which is where you cut the sear at too far of an angle the other way, okay? Totally unsafe. Absolutely unsafe. There's basically, nothing holding that hammer and sear together, and the slightest bump can set it off, resulting in a negligent discharge. And then we have, there's not really a name for it. Some people call it neutral. I don't call it neutral. I just call it riches. This is the way I was taught, and so this is the way I've always done it. But basically, it's kind of a cross between negative and neutral, in the respect that you've got these two planes facing each other, running parallel, and then you just do a cut on the bottom corner, okay, which allows for a very nice, light, crisp trigger pull with little to no creep, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of demonstrate on a parts gun how to do a trigger job. Now, let me explain something. This isn't something that you want to do on your own unless you have more than one 1911. In order to do this properly, you need to buy some pretty specialized tools, okay? You're going to spend $150, $175 when it's all said and done on some stones and a jig and everything else to make sure you do it correctly. And unless you plan on doing more than one trigger job, it's really not worth it. Just if all you want is a trigger job on a 1911, it's your only 1911, it's the only one you're ever going to buy, and you don't really want to get into it that much, take it to a gunsmith, pay 75, 100 bucks or whatever they charge. I know I charge 75 bucks for a 1911 trigger job, and call it a day, okay? Because you'll save money. But for argument's sake, I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. I'm going to show you how I do it, okay? My way of doing it is not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but it's the way I was taught. It's the way I've done it for years. It's, you know, it's my way of doing it, okay? So we'll see you here in a few minutes. We're going to get the camera reset, and I'll be back. All right, guys, so here's our frame and the trigger. And on this armorer's block from, I think it's from 10.8, I think, yeah, 10.8, I've got the hammer and the sear pegged on the board so you can kind of see what we're going for here, okay? Now, just in case, I'm getting older, my eyes aren't as good as they are, or as good as they used to be. So for close-up work, I use like an optivisor, and this one here is 2 times magnification, I think at 10 feet, or it's, no, at 10 inches rather. It's great for doing this kind of stuff because just with the naked eye, with the tolerances we're talking about, it's really super hard to see with the naked eye. And as you get older and your eyes, you know, get older, you know, it gets harder to do. So this thing here is indispensable. But I told you before about the specialized tools, and the first thing you're going to want is some kind of a sear jig. Now I've been using here recently an Ed Brown jig because I like Ed Brown's trigger jobs, or correction, Ed Brown's trigger jobs are the same way I do mine, so the jig mirrors the way I used to do these by hand without a jig until I started getting older, and a jig is where it's at now. But so you have this Ed Brown sear jig, which is about 40 bucks or so at Brownells, and it's set up good. It's set up ready to go. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to adjust it at all, okay? If you leave it the way it comes from in the package, you're going to end up with a really nice trigger no matter what, okay? The other things are some stones, okay? These are a medium and a very fine grit stone, again from Brownells. And this is a trigger track stone, again from Brownells. You don't need an armorer's block. You know, I use it for other stuff too, but you know, it comes in handy. And some 1000 grit sandpaper or 1200 grit sandpaper or something like that, and a wood block or some other kind of stable block to use it on, okay? And a little bit of gun oil. Now, what we're going to do, and I'm not actually doing it, I'm just going to go through the motions, but you take and you put the sear inside the jig using the sear pin from the gun, okay? Okay, so the sear is in the jig, and you've got a shim here, okay, which is 0.02 inches. And then you're going to want to take the medium stone. Now we're talking about 21/100ths of an inch, okay? It's not a whole lot. Take a little bit of oil, drip it on there, put the shim on there so you get a nice smooth, you know, a nice smooth movement. And then you're going to take and you're going to run the stone while holding the sear from the back. You're going to run the stone and you're just going to hone it down, okay, until it's flush with the shim. Then you take the very fine stone, the white one, give it a couple passes, shoop, 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 okay? Now you're done. You're done, okay? This entire face of this sear, especially if it's a blued one like this, okay, should be completely and totally it should be shiny. Okay, pull it out of the jig. Now this is something that you actually do by hand, but what you want is you want to get about a 45-degree angle, and you want to just break this edge, this leading edge. Okay, and so you just stone it a couple of times, three times, and go over it with the white one again, a couple, 3 times, and all you want to do is you just want the slightest break on that edge, okay, so it mirrors that 4th drawing on the whiteboard. Okay, now as far as I'm concerned with this, the sear is done. We can put that to the side. Now we're going to do the hammer. The hammer is very, very important. Okay, you don't do anything with the half cock notch at all. Where it's important is where it engages with the sear. This little angle here has to be perfectly 90 degrees. Okay, so you take the medium stone, okay, you set it in there, you make sure you stay flush, okay, and you make sure that that's 90 degrees. Okay, and also the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that that too, okay, is 0.02 inches, 21/100ths of an inch. Okay, any less than that and the trigger is not going to be safe. Okay, the 21/100ths of an inch is the sweet spot. Okay, so you put the shim on there and just kind of rub your finger across it and make sure that it's flush. It could even be just a little bit taller, not too much taller. A little bit taller is okay, shorter is bad. That means you want to take either a little bit more material off here or get a new hammer. Okay, but the biggest thing is that this angle, okay, has to be exactly 90 degrees. And you just do that with the stone again. You just put the stone on there and run it, okay, and then take the white stone and run it, okay, and you see how shiny that is now? It's beautiful. Okay, now I haven't done anything on this trigger at all, so this is just for demonstration purposes. So to recap, okay, hammer, sear, when the trigger bar hits the disconnect, okay, and pushes the sear out, the hammer falls, strikes the firing pin, gun goes bang, comes back, and catches. Okay, this is where the Optivisor or some other magnifier comes in handy, so you can get down real close and look and see how that engagement is. Okay, and that's, you know, you want to kind of push on that and make sure it's not going to break free. Okay, if it does, that's bad. The biggest part of any trigger job on any 1911 is deburring. Okay, so that's where this trigger channel stone comes in. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to take, I don't know if we can see in here, you see the cutouts? You're going to take the stone and you're just going to make a couple of passes inside the channel. Okay, just a couple of passes. And what you're doing, you're not taking material off. Do not take material off. All you're doing is taking the burrs off. I don't care where you bought the gun from. If it's a production gun, it's going to have burrs. So all you're doing is taking burrs off. Okay, and that's going to smooth the travel of the trigger. You do that, just a couple passes. You can look at it with some kind of magnifier and see if there's any burrs. But you know, you don't want to take material off. You just want to smooth burrs. As far as the trigger itself, okay, again, we're not looking to take any material off of the bow. We're just gonna smooth it. Okay, like on this one here that's parkerized or blued or whatever the hell they call it. Okay, this one here, you just kind of do that. Okay, and on 1,000 or 1,200 grit sandpaper, just okay, smooth it out, and then on the back side, smooth it out, because you can see where it rubs. That's where it engages the disconnect and the sear. Okay, the other thing, and I don't know if I have one back here or not. I think I do. Let me see if I have another sear spring so I can show you guys. sear spring. Okay. Guys, I'm going to be right back after this quick break. I'm going to grab another sear spring out of inventory. I'm going to show you that. Okay. So, after you do everything I've already showed you how to do, put the gun back together, make sure everything goes back the way it should, make sure that there's no creep in the hammer, or in the trigger rather. Make sure that the hammer and the sear engage the way they need to in a nice safe way, okay? And then get your gun and measure the trigger pull. You should be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4 pounds or so at this point, okay? If that is still not light enough for you, okay, you have options. Option number one is to take the sear spring, take the gun back apart, take the sear spring, okay? Take this middle leaf and you just bend it back, okay? You don't crank on it, okay? You just want to bend it back a little bit, okay? Put it back together, try it. If it's still not light enough, pull it back, do it again. Now here's the thing though. It's a good thing these things are cheap, because if you go too far and you make the trigger too light, you're going to have what's called hammer follow. Basically, you run a very real risk of turning your single action 1911 into a full auto 1911, becoming an accidental felon. Okay? So, if you go back too far, this is now toast. You need to throw it away, spend $6, get another one, call it a day, and start over. Okay? Your other option is to go with a reduced power mainspring. This serves two functions. Now, they say that by just putting a reduced power mainspring in the gun and not doing anything else, you can reduce your trigger pull by about 25%. I don't believe that to be the case. I've never measured it, but it doesn't feel like 25% to me. It is nice and it is noticeably crisper, because what this does is when you get a reduced power mainspring, it makes it easier for the hammer to cock, so the gun doesn't have to work as hard, okay? And the trigger pull does get a little bit lighter because the hammer doesn't have that much pressure pushing up on the hammer strut, okay? So, to recap, take your gun apart, stone the channels, stone the sear, stone the hammer, put everything back together, try it. If it's not light enough, tweak the center tine on this spring. Don't mess with these two tines, the center tine only, okay? Put it back together. You can always go for a reduced power mainspring as well. When I do a trigger job on one of my 1911s, the first thing I do is replace the mainspring with a reduced power mainspring, and then I do all of the above, and I come out with a consistent 3.5 pound trigger every single time. For a carry gun, that's perfect. 3.5 pounds is perfect. Any lighter, and you're running into unsafe conditions. Okay? Again, you do have to have some specialized equipment in order to do this job at home. If all you have is one 1911, and all you're ever going to own is one 1911, take it to a smith and have them do it for you, because it's not going to cost you as much as it will just for the tools. Cool? Any questions, feel free to send me a message through the website, okay? I don't read a lot of the comments on the channel, but if you send me a private message through YouTube or an email through my website, I will absolutely read your message and I will respond to you. I can't guarantee responding to comments on the channel. I've got too much other stuff going on. So, until next time, this is Rich from GunTortureTests.com. See you later.